Welcome to the Art Coaching Club podcast. I'm your host, Hayley Price, artist, owner of the online art gallery, The Scouted Studio, and business coach for artists. With experience starting and running my own art business, growing an online art gallery, and coaching artists internationally on how to grow their careers, I've learned the art world inside and out. I've made all of the mistakes so you don't have to. In this podcast, we will cover everything from broad topics like how to reach out to galleries and build your audience, to the nitty-gritty questions like how do I ship a 48 by 60 piece across the country. Every episode will be a little bit different, but I promise that each week I will show you how to tackle your biggest business challenges so you can get back in the studio doing what you love. Now let's get into it. Hey everyone, I am so excited to bring you today's interview with Katherine Freeman. She is an incredible artist. She is KF Original Art on Instagram, and she has about 30,000 followers. So she really shares her tips on how she grew her brand and her business from the ground up, tips for branding and how to stand out in a saturated market, the power of partnerships and how she worked with people like Serena and Lily and the Collective in Dallas and how she navigated which partnerships were worth pursuing. She even worked with Susan Gordon Pottery, who I absolutely love. She's really nailed how to build a brand, but also how to strategically market and make decisions that make sense moving forward. She now has prints and a wallpaper line, but all of it still feels like her. And we really talk about in this episode how to create a household name. You know, she said from the get-go, I want to be someone where they see a piece of my art on the wall and without my signature, they can recognize it. And she strategically worked to not only do that, but also to do that strategically before she launched into other things like prints and wallpaper so that it all flows together really well. It all has created this larger brand image, and she's just been really smart with how she's grown her business. So I think this is a really great episode for anyone interested in branding or just what you can do and how you can expand. And she has such an incredible story, so I'm really excited to get into today's episode. But quickly, before we dive in, just as a reminder, feel free to leave a rating and review before you get too deep in today's podcast. You can do it while you're listening. It takes not very long. You can either do it as a quick couple of stars in Spotify, or you can do stars and a review in Apple Podcasts. Either helps get the word out and allows me to get more guests on. So definitely consider doing that if you have been enjoying. Also consider subscribing so you never miss an episode. Now let's get into today's interview with Katherine. Okay. Well, give us a little bit of background into you and how that led to an art career.
Yeah, so I went to the University of Alabama and I majored in public relations and I minored in studio art. And it was funny because I felt like my parents always said, they were like, you can't make a career out of art, you know? So I was like, okay. So I'll major in PR. And then after I graduated, I moved back to Atlanta to work alongside my mom in real estate. And did that for about a year. And I was still painting on the side, just doing little things for people. And all of a sudden, my sister was like, you just need to start an Instagram. I'm like, okay. So I start an Instagram, and then my art really started to take off. And I kind of slowly stopped working for my mom. And I got a studio space, and it really kind of just all took off from there. So then I was able to pursue it full time when I got married and moved to Texas with my husband. And I didn't want to get my real estate license in Texas. And so he just said, well, why don't you pursue art? And so really just kind of took off then.
Yeah, that's amazing. I feel like sometimes, well, I've talked to a lot of artists and I was the same way. Like I studied art in school, but my parents were like, maybe get the business degree too. Like, we don't know, we support you, but kind of. And yeah. I mean, I'm thankful to have that now, but it's funny now I've talked to so many artists that they're like, we all got the same advice, but a lot of people, you're like, we've made it. We did it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I've kind of made a career out of it. So
yeah. Tell us a little bit about your work and how it kind of evolved from, doing stuff on the side to where is your work now and kind of how has it expanded over that, the course of a few years from then to now.
Yeah. I feel like this is something, my work, I feel like has totally evolved from where I started. And I feel like it's still kind of constantly evolving. I would say that when it comes to like my style, I really have always been attracted to keeping it very playful, whimsical, colorful, regardless of like my style at that moment in time. I really like for my art to kind of exude positive emotion and just make people feel a certain way. Obviously, like art in general, I feel like you either like it or you don't. It's very personal, I think. And yeah, I like for my art to make people feel a certain way. But to answer your question, my art has totally evolved over the years and continues to evolve.
Right. I think that's okay. I feel like a lot of artists that are newer feel like they have to find their style and it has to kind of stay the same and be this one thing and it has to be, one thing for forever for them to find success. But I think it really should evolve because people want to see you change and grow. And it sounds like you've done a really good job of knowing the core of what your art needs to be about. Like you're like, I want it to be playful. You stick with a lot of the same color palettes and like it does exude happiness and it's playful, but you have evolved in that you're not just doing the same thing over and over again. And I think that probably has allowed you to be more successful.
Yeah. And I think that from the beginning, I feel like developing a style is very hard, like developing an aesthetic. One of my main goals in starting an actual business and not just kind of painting for fun has always been I want somebody to look at my art with no signature and be like, oh, that must be a Katherine Freeman original painting, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And when you have a style that's constantly evolving, it's hard to do that. And I think that if you can really just, for me, find something I like, play with all the color, and really keep my head down and paint every single day helped me to develop a style and to feel very confident in that style and be like,
Right.
this is me, my art, and I love this.
Yeah. And I definitely feel like you're at that point now. I've followed you since I feel like for forever. And I can tell. I'm like, oh, that's one of hers. Like you can just tell immediately.
I love that.
But I
Thank
think
you.
it does come from you've done a great job showing up on Instagram. You have a really strong brand and brand image, like beyond just the artwork, like your whole feed feels similar to the artwork. It all works really well together. Can you talk a little bit on that? Like, how do you think about branding beyond just posting pictures of the artwork? How have you developed a whole brand?
Okay, so I love the marketing aspect of things. I love the branding side of things. And I think it's easy to get caught up in that to where at the end of the day, I'm like, wait, I haven't even painted. I'm so focused on, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this next release or this collection, it can be inspired by this and all these different design boards and all this. And I'm like, well, wait, I need to paint. So I love the marketing and branding aspect of things. I think that for me, I love creating an experience for people,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's somebody unboxing a piece of my art that they just got, or maybe it's like a mini and like a little giftable item, or whether they're scrolling my Instagram feed or they're looking at my like to know it. I want my brand to be the same across all platforms. Like consistency is so key in my branding. And I just kind of feel like it's taken years to develop that. Yeah, it's like I love it. And I think that now I have two fabulous girls that really help me
Mm-hmm.
and help me kind of stay in line with my brand and what works and what doesn't. But I want my whole brand, I want my art to be an experience for people.
Yeah, I feel like what you've done really well, and the key to really good branding for artists is having something that's very distinct. It's your voice. People can, like you said, tell the art is you. And I think that's what makes the like to know it makes sense. It makes the blog make sense. It makes, you've done wallpaper and you've done all these other things. It makes it all work together versus feeling like a bunch of separate things you're doing. It's like all of it, I feel like feels like you and works together to build the brand versus is like an offshoot. And I think that's
Yeah,
what
no,
good branding can do.
yeah, and it's fun. It's like yeah, I find it to be a little bit of an outlet from painting. I feel like it kind of inspire my painting. It's a little bit of a different creative outlet of your voice and how you're going to say things and how it's going to make somebody feel. And I don't know. Yeah. So I've enjoyed building that.
Yeah. Do you think your PR background helped with that? Or do you think it was just something you kind of learned over time just because you enjoyed it?
I guess I would say that maybe, yeah. I think it did help a little bit. But again, I think that in establishing a brand, you're also establishing a voice for your brand. So like the different girls that I've brought onto my team, I've gone very in depth when I've interviewed people because at the end of the day, you're teaching somebody not only how you want them to perform for you, what you want them to do and help you with, but you're teaching them your voice and your
Yeah.
brand. And it's hard to teach somebody that. I kind of feel like
Mhm.
it's like get it or you don't. It's hard to
Right.
teach them that.
I totally agree. I've had so much trouble, not because people aren't great, but I've had trouble hiring people to help me with social media, either for the art coaching piece or the Scouted Studio, because I feel like I know exactly what I want it to be. And sometimes it's hard expressing that to other people. And I'm like, it's hard for me to hand it off because even though the Scouted Studio is a gallery and it's not just it's not my art necessarily, but I feel like it's kind of my voice in terms of what the brand is. And so I'm like, I've really struggled with that. But it sounds like you've done a great job interviewing people and finding them, but it's hard to pass that off.
It is. And I think I've learned that about myself over the years is that when it comes to delegating, I'm not the best at delegating. I want to do it. I have a vision of how I want it done, and I want it done how I want it. I want it to be perfect, and so that's very hard for me. But I have found some fabulous people that kind of just got it and were easy to bring on board, and are both
Yeah.
very creative. And yeah,
Yeah. I feel like I finally hired someone to help me and I'm like, she's awesome, but I'm still like in the nervous phase of like, okay, I have to give you work. Like I'm so used to
I
just doing
know
it all myself. So I'm still kind of in that phase, but it sounds
it's
like
hard.
you have it going great.
Well, I feel like it's definitely a learning. We're always learning. So
Yeah. Well, what
mhm.
does a day look like for you? How much are you spending on actual painting or even like a week if it's not kind of broken down daily, but how much time do you spend on the branding and the business side of stuff versus, actually creating and being creative in terms of like paintings and all the other stuff you're designing? We'll be back after a quick break. As an artist, I love all things architecture and design. Something I've noticed lately is that most of the design, especially on TV shows or even what I'm seeing in my own community, has become pretty repetitive. I'm tired of seeing the same designs over and over again, and then I found Shelter, the architecture channel. Shelter is a channel that brings high quality programming on architecture, urban planning, and more. They feature films, their own originals, series, and even shorts. Their curated library has kept me engaged and entertained when winding down from my own work, but it also gives me a ton of new and creative ideas for my own home and for different projects I'm working on. A few of my favorite shows are Tiny Spaces and A Simpler Way of Life. I love seeing how people live more sustainably and smaller, even if I can't necessarily do it myself right now. I highly recommend you check out Shelter, the architecture channel today. They offer an amazing free trial that I have just finished on their site. So definitely recommend starting there, and then you can choose if you want to join monthly or annually at shelter.stream. I really love this. I think it is great for so many artists. I think staying creative and inspired and seeing what else is going on in the creative world is so important, and nothing like learning from some of the world's best designers. So I recommend you check out Shelter, the architecture channel today.
Yeah. So I have three kids under the age of 5. So our life can be a little chaotic at times, and the days can be very different at times. Yeah. So I am very fortunate to have a studio in the back of my house, which has been a dream for me because it's like I can leave the house and go to work, quote unquote, but it's not, if I need to pop back in, I can, right? A typical day is basically bringing my two oldest to school, doing a little workout or something for myself in the morning, and then coming back to the studio. I usually will have a meeting or two if I have a different collaboration coming up or a new release. And then I really try and paint, I would say for sure 3 days a week, if not four, for I would like 3 or 4 hours a day. Sometimes I'm doing commission work or just kind of experimenting for myself, I feel like.
Well, that's so important to do. And I feel like that's the hardest thing to make time for is the experimentation when you do have a lot of other things going on.
I totally agree. I totally agree. Or you get wrapped up in just doing a commission, or, I have this collection that sometimes you just want to paint for yourself and like play with color and textures and yeah.
Yeah.
So
Up to this point, you have obviously grown a large brand, but what has really been some of the things that you think have really propelled you, grown your audience, helped you get your name out there in terms of, a website or social media or an email list or partnerships? Like, what do you think has really allowed you to get to where you are now?
Again, I would say consistency. I feel like finding what works for you and just running with that. I think keeping your head down, it's so easy in this market. I feel like it has gotten a little bit saturated with, abstract artists, or that it's so easy to kind of like look around, but stay true to yourself. And what you love and what works for you is what I have found kind of propels me to continue my business and keep going and grow my brand and evolve my work. Partnerships are huge. I have loved working with a few different, whether it be designers or more stores. I think finding a store that really aligns with your brand, a store that you feel like you would love to see your art styled in. That's kind of how I envision. I'm like, okay, oh my gosh, I would love to see my art styled in Serena and Lily. Or I've worked with the Collective in Dallas, which is a beautiful home store. I'm
Mhm.
like, send me all the photos of my art style because it's inspiring.
And they take great
Um,
photos. I mean, just from
oh,
Instagram.
yeah. Or again, Society Social. They have all this incredible furniture with different fabrics that are colorful and rattan and texture. And I just think it's very inspiring to see how other people style my work.
Well,
So
and it elevates the work. I mean, I think you can style all day long in your home, if you're an artist just starting out, but I think those partnerships, not only are you getting in front of their audience and they're doing some marketing, but also you're having someone else's, design expertise. They have the store or whatever it is, showcase your work in a whole new way. And so I think it also just elevates your work in that way too.
oh, definitely. And it builds, honestly, it builds credibility, which is, I feel like, something that I've really kind of learned over the years. That's important if you're trying
Right.
to really sell your work.
Well, and I think, like you said, it is a saturated market. I mean, I think with things like Instagram and the ease of making your own website, which I think it's great, but I think so many people have been able to start their own businesses, which is awesome, but also means there's a lot more competition. So if you can
Right.
say, I have great work, I have the credibility, I'm in these places, but also that kind of shows that you're a businesswoman and you know what you're doing. And these people don't just work with anyone. So it also can kind of give you that leverage you need to stand out from the crowd a little bit. You've also expanded kind of outside of just artwork. So you've done prints, you've done some gifts, you've also did a partnership with Susan Gordon Pottery, who I love. Can you talk about
Yeah.
a little of these other things and sort of like how you've expanded out from just art, but also kind of stayed true to who you are in the brand?
Yeah. Susan Gordon Pottery, that was like a collaboration that she's like on my dream list. You have kind of like a hit
Oh,
list of who you would love to work with. And she was one of them. I just feel like she's done a great job at creating a brand, speaking to her audience. She has a beautiful story. I just overall, I think she's done a fabulous job and I'm very impressed by her. So I think having partnerships like that, and whether it be little giftable items, or when it came to Susan Gordon, I just thought, okay, maybe we do a gift box and we each have something in this gift box. I don't know if it's going to be a little vase or a ring dish, or, it's just, again, to work alongside a brand like that. And I feel like we probably have a similar audience, or I would say I would try to have a similar audience to her. That would be a goal of mine. Yeah. So I just think collaborations and partnerships like that are huge if you're trying to grow your brand.
How did you strategically expand? So when it comes to, I think a lot of artists start with paintings and maybe they'll go into prints or maybe they'll go into something else, but it's also easy to kind of spread yourself too thin. How do you pick and choose what's worth pursuing and what might kind of water down the brand because it's something unrelated? Like, how do you choose what is worth your time?
Yeah, it's funny you ask because I like this question. I think that when I first started selling my Instagram, when I first started selling my work on Instagram, I felt like I was gaining the traction and people would just buy from my Instagram. And I was so excited about it. I wanted to put my work on everything. And I think that what I did was smart in the sense that I really didn't start doing prints and putting my work on anything else until I totally had a voice and established what it was I was painting. And like I said from the jump, you know, I wanted somebody to look at my work and say, oh, that's the Katherine Freeman original. And I didn't want to just all of a sudden, oh, I like this painting I did and go make it a print. Or I do think that at first I was hesitant to do prints. Not that it devalues your work, but I mean, in a sense, I didn't want people to not want the originals anymore because I offered it in a print. But what I've learned, I think, over the years is some people love prints and would prefer a print over an original because they want to collect a ton, which is great. But there definitely, I will say, was a little bit of strategy behind not releasing too many, or maybe you do a limited edition and you only release X amount, don't have too many options at a time of prints. And I don't make every painting a print. I've photographed every painting to become a print if I want to do that in the future. But I'll get messages all the time about an original piece, and someone will say, oh, is this going to be a print? And I'm like, strategically, I have thought about at the beginning of a year what pieces will be released as a print.
Yeah, I feel like and it's different for every artist. It's not like there's a certain timeline, but I do think so many artists come to me and they're like, I want to be a household name. Like, there's so many artists out there that you know their work, and you could see it on wallpaper, you could see it on fabric, you could see it anywhere, and you'd be like, that's someone, it's like you just know who they are. And I'm like, to get to that point, it is kind of a long game, and you do maybe have to start with sticking with originals, or just being a little bit slower, because if you jump into too many different things too quickly, you do run the risk of kind of diluting your brand a little bit, and then people might know you for prints and might not know you for original art. And I think a lot of artists want to be known for their original art, want people to see it and know it's theirs. And then that's the point where you can go and do prints really well, and you can do, have your art printed on things or gifts or something like that really well. So I think what you did was really smart, and it's paid off, because now you're doing wallpaper and it feels like you. It doesn't feel like someone else is just doing wallpaper. It feels very authentic, and the timing was really good.
Also, I think it's important if you are doing prints or wallpaper, or I think do a lot of research and really stand behind the manufacturer of the product before you sell it, right? I mean, the people that do my prints, they are crisp, clear. I am so confident in the quality of them. I think same with wallpaper. I had to talk to a lot of different people because it's easy to get just excited about it and just sell it.
Right. Well, and I mean, a print is one thing, like it's an investment, but like a wallpaper is an investment. Like you're putting it on your walls, you're paying for someone to put it up. Like it's not like that is a investment in terms of like your wall is about to be covered in this. Like it's not something you have to think about it. Right. And so you want the quality to be really high, but same with prints. I mean, I think I've definitely ordered artwork or seen stuff before where it's like, I'll order a print because someone's having a print sale or something. And I'm like, oh, I can like add this to my gallery wall. But then it comes and I'm like, if the material's not great, I'm like, I don't want it. If it's a print, it needs to be pristine,
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah.
And that might be because I'm an art snob, but still, yeah, like you said, it's all about an experience when people open something. And like I was talking to another artist about this, like you want them to be like amazed when they open it and excited and think it looks even better in person than it did online. So it's like doing the research to make sure that happens.
Definitely. I totally agree.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your wallpaper. So why did you decide to do it?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So obviously I love art, but I also am a huge fan of interior design. I am so inspired by interior design. And I kind of was thinking that I would love to give people the option of including Katherine Freeman original art in their house. And maybe it's not a painting. So maybe we put wallpaper on our walls, or maybe it's a fabric, or maybe just a lot of other ways to incorporate my work in their home. And so I thought that, okay, I didn't feel like my abstract art would translate well into wallpaper. So I knew I had to create a print, a texture, a different,
Right.
And so I did a lot of reflecting, I guess you could say, on like, okay, what do I think would look great as a wallpaper? Is it a shape? Is it a color? Is it the contrast between colors? What is it? And I just like constantly would be doodling and took a lot of pictures of like nature and shadows and how a palm tree looked in the shadow or how a flower looked in the shadow. And then I could just kind of translated it and created different patterns that I felt like would be great wallpaper. And it's a very long process. It took me about a year to do, but I'm really proud and I'm really happy.
No, they're great. And they, again, feel like your brand and feel like you without being just copies of your artwork, which I think a lot of artists don't realize that sometimes. It's like some stuff, some artwork doesn't just translate to be as a wallpaper or fabric or even like on products. You know, sometimes you'll see artists who like can put their prints in calendars or on like little gifts at like Anthropology or something, but it's like some art doesn't translate that well. And so you
Right.
did a really good job of saying, okay, I have the skill set of knowing colors and knowing what my brand feels like. How can I create a wallpaper that would go in the home of someone who would also buy my artwork? Not, I need a wallpaper that's going to match the painting they're going to buy. It just,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
I love color.
Mhm.
Clearly, I feel like my art is very colorful. I love color. And so I did want to incorporate that into the wallpaper, the colors and shapes. And again, like you said, I just felt like it really translated well into a room and would go well with my work, with my original art. So,
Definitely. What did the process look like from, obviously you created these ideas, but then how did you go about actually creating it and finding people and like how did that happen?
yeah, no, again, I did a lot of research. Basically, I sketched out a whole bunch of different designs, like on paper with watercolor and with some paint, with even just like oil pastels, and sketched out a bunch on paper. Then I translated that to the computer and messed around with what I thought would be a good pattern. Then it's funny because obviously, like if you do prints and stuff, you know that the way a color looks on paper that I have painted, it might take printing it out 3 or 4 times for it to actually be. I mean, it's hard to match color.
Right.
Uh, and I was very adamant about having exact colors. Like I want this color pink or this color green. So there was a bunch of different prints that came that I either was like, okay, this color works or this doesn't. The manufacturer that I use is fabulous, and they really, really worked with me just on like the back end of like the computer stuff. I felt like that was very confusing to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can paint you a pattern here all day long, but to like really put on the computer, to make a pattern out of it was hard for me. So basically, they just sent me a whole bunch of different drafts of what looked good and printed it out in actual wallpaper size, big. I'm trying to think of the word,
Like rolls of it, like sheets of it.
yeah, basically it would just be like a long roll. So I could really envision it in a space. And then from there, we just kind of like ran with it and started selling wallpaper. So, but it was about a year long process.
How many SKUs do you have? Like how many patterns and colors do you have available now?
I thought you were going to ask me this, and I think five or six.
I was
Um,
definitely looking and I should know, but I don't remember.
no, I'm like, how do I not know? I think 5 or 6 available up on my website now. All of them except one are offered in about 4 different colors.
Yeah.
So it's really, really fun. And it was great because for marketing purposes, I thought I want to put it in my own home and have it photographed so people can see it installed.
Right.
And so, of course, it's like the second that the wallpaper is ready to go, I put it in my house, and then we did have it photographed. And it's just exciting to me because wallpaper to me feels like art on your walls. It makes it feel very finished, and it can make a space feel very finished. Yeah, so it's just like to see my art. It just in my own home, it's inspiring.
Yeah, that's great. And how do you feel like when it was time to market the wallpaper beyond just photographing it in your own home? Like, how did you think about marketing it? Because it probably was a little bit of a different thought process than just marketing paintings.
Yeah, a little bit more strategic. I feel like there's a little bit more strategy. I feel like that goes into marketing wallpaper because again, it is a huge investment. But honestly, I would say that I love styling my own work, and other than putting it in my house, it was just kind of like I want to see how many designers I can get it in the hands of, whose
Mhm.
homes, what other homes we could see it in. Because sometimes people need to envision it. They
Right.
need to see it before they actually do it because it is expensive.
And I feel like designers is such a great way to do that because being in a home store or something, it's like you're getting these people that are styling your work, your wallpaper, whatever it is, maybe in a way you wouldn't have initially thought of. And they're experts. I mean, they're a reason people hire them to make their homes beautiful. So it's like, why not get your wallpaper in the hands of people that can make it really look amazing?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that was at first when I got all the samples, I wanted to see how many designers I could get it in the hands of because seeing them style it is very inspiring to a collector.
Yeah. Did you do outreach to designers to announce your new wallpaper?
I sent a bunch of gift boxes. I have, custom gift boxes, Katherine Freeman, just like very on brand, just again, unboxing an experience. And,
Mhm.
it's like I wanted to be at somebody's door and just like make them feel happy. So, yeah, I sent a bunch of boxes to designers that had samples of traditional wallpaper versus we also offer peel and stick. Now, I feel like designers all are using the traditional, but a lot of my clients, I feel like, do purchase peel and stick. So,
Well, that's great. Well, tell me a little bit about just kind of your successful moments overall. I mean, I feel like you've had so many milestones you've hit, but what have been some really big ones that you've seen and that you've felt like, I've made it. I've really accomplished something as an artist.
I would say, again, I feel like I am no professional yet, and I am constantly like really trying to get my work out there. But I have had a few milestones that have made me just really excited. I think that there's a few designers that I've done commission pieces for. Kara Miller, she is a designer in Florida. And when she reached out to me for a commission piece, I was just like, oh, like, wait, you see me? You know what I mean? Because it's like you work so hard and I do all these paintings and it's like to get them in the hands of people like that, you just feel accomplished. Like, okay, I'm doing something right here. Uh,
Definitely.
and then I think just partnerships and stuff that I've had have just kind of just reassured me that I'm headed in the right direction.
Yeah. I feel like it's always, well, I mean, any partnership or deal or however you want to call it that you get with someone that I feel like you look up to or you respect their brand or what it is they do, I feel like that's always a big one for me. It's like if I've really admired someone for a long time and then they want to work with me, either an artist or, podcast or whatever it is, I'm like, okay, that's always a good sense of accomplishment because it just makes you feel like you're doing
Yeah.
something right.
Yeah, it reassures you. It's like, okay, I'm headed in the right direction. We're going somewhere here.
Definitely. Well, on the flip side, what have been some challenges you faced? What's been hard for you, about this career, about going full time as an artist?
So I would say we have a very young family. And I think that over the years navigating, again, we have three adorable, the best kids in the entire world. And I mean, my number one job is to be a mom. I love being a mom, but just kind of navigating, okay, the work life, the work home life balance. And when you're creative, which you understand, it's kind of hard to turn that side of your brain off. And I feel like I'm constantly on or constantly thinking about something work related or feeling inspired by this, or I could create this or do this or a collection of this. So I would say that navigating, just when I'm with my kids, I want to just focus on being a mom and putting that side of my life down for a minute. But yeah, I'm learning. I'm definitely
Yeah.
learning.
Well, it's hard. I think when you're a creative and like a business minded person, as I feel like you are, it's like every time you get an idea, you want to jump on it. Or at least that's the way I feel. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited about this. Like I want to go paint it or I want to go explore it or I want to go research more about it. But it is hard. It's hard to prioritize. And sometimes you're like, no, I have, for you, it's probably like, I need to do this with my family. I probably should not do this right now. Or this could be an idea that waits for next year or something like that. But I think learning to prioritize is important, but it's also hard. I mean, I feel like I definitely have that sometimes where I'm like, I know I need to be doing X, Y, and Z, but I'm really excited about this like random project I want to do.
Yeah, no, that's my life. I always feel like that.
If you could go back and do it all again, what would you change? What would you keep the same? Like if you were starting over as an artist today, maybe still working part-time with your mom, like really going back in time, like what would you change, if anything?
Um, yeah. No, I would say that I think at the beginning of my art, really selling my art, I feel like I've always loved painting, but like my art career, I would say, I think I had mentioned it earlier. I felt like I kind of gained great traction on Instagram to where I was selling my art. And not that you say you felt like you didn't need galleries or need somebody else to sell it, but it just, I would post a picture of something and it would sell.
Mm-hmm.
So it was hard for me to justify working with a gallery when I'm like, ugh. But I do, if I could go back, I would try to probably get in a few more galleries because I think at the end of the day, it validates price point. It just gives you that credibility that, especially if you're a new artist starting out, like there's so many different emerging artists, but if you can have a gallery behind you being like, this is legit, like this is an incredible artist. I think that says a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. I think a lot of artists start the same way as you, where it's just they're selling through Instagram. Like they don't feel like they need a website yet, or they don't need to work with other people yet. But it is, I feel like even if it's working, doing those things and working with someone can just get you there faster and get you selling at a higher price point faster and in front of designers faster. And so even if it feels unnecessary, maybe because you're doing it on your own, I think there are benefits to it for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Well, looking to the future, what do you see next for your business? Are there any like big goals you're working towards this year?
I would say this year we're working on some fabric. So I can just envision my prints on pillows and drapes. And I mean, I can just like envision a child's bedroom that is like straight up KF original art, you know? So that excites me. Currently working on that. And then I also am excited that I'm going to be partnering with the Ronald McDonald House in Gainesville. They have a new renovated house that will home 50 families. And are you familiar with what?
Yeah.
Okay.
We used to
Yes.
volunteer when I was growing up.
Yes, I feel like it's an awesome community of people. And so I actually, in this new renovated house, will be putting like 50 prints amongst all of the bedrooms in the home, and then 4 original pieces in like the communal spaces and like the front, and then a few other prints without or within the home. So I'm very excited about that. Also, in the fall, I'm going to be releasing a coloring book called Color with Katherine. And for each coloring book purchased, I'll donate 10 back to the Children's Hospital. And again, I just think it's a fun way to be able to share my art with children and families and for a great cause. So,
Yeah, I really love that. Well, I'll definitely stay tuned for that and share it and stuff because that's awesome. I think that's really, really great. And I think like the Ronald McDonald House, your work is so happy and playful, and what a great thing to have in the rooms while, just brighten people's days a little bit while they're staying there.
couldn't agree more. I could not agree more.
Yes. Well, I love to end every episode with a tip or a lesson or something you've learned up to this point that you think you could maybe pass on to other artists just to kind of give them a leg up or help them in their career a little bit.
Okay, again, I know I've said consistency a lot throughout this podcast, but I think that that is something that I have just really clung to creating a brand for myself. I think that if you find a painting style or a technique or something you like, do it again in like 10 different color variations and just keep doing it. I think that if you're starting out, it's so important to really define your style. And the only way to really perfect it is to literally keep your head down and just keep painting, whether it's a commission or you're painting for yourself. Experimentation is huge and consistency is huge. So those
Yeah.
would be my little tips.
Great advice. I love it. Well, tell everyone how they can find you, your social media, your website, all the places people can find you and learn more about you.
Yeah, awesome. I on all of my social platforms, I am KF Original Art. And then my website is kforiginaLart.com. And yeah, so follow along.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing all of this. I feel like this was so helpful. And I think artists will love just hearing a little bit of like the background of how you got to where you are. And, it's really easy to follow you and see the end picture of you doing all these things. And I think it's cool to hear kind of like how you got there and what it took. And yeah, it's great to hear about kind of where you are now.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am very honored to be included in your podcast. So I really appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Katherine. I thought she gave so much insightful advice, and really just we covered so many different topics. If you liked this episode, consider subscribing so you never miss one of our Tuesday or surprise Thursday episodes. Moving forward, I plan to continue to do artist interviews every Tuesday, and then I will intersperse some Thursday episodes with either solo episodes with me or more industry experts. So we still have a lot of exciting industry experts lined up, like a wellness person, a website template designer, another marketing person, just so much great stuff. So you'll definitely want to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I will see you next Tuesday.